Chapter 2, Cells, Organs, Microenvironments of the Immune System. This is in Kuby Immunology, the 7th edition. I'm on page 32 in this chapter 32, and I'm going to be talking about the different types of blood cells and the concentrations. One of the things that we've used for a long period of time is the ratio of cells that you find in the blood. So you can do blood screenings and look for red blood cells. If the red blood cells are really low, then the person's anemic. There's something going on. If you look at the different kinds of ratios between neutrophils, eosinophils, basophils, etc., those granulocytes, then you can get a different idea of what's happening. So, for example, on a regular blood smear, if I were to just take a drop of blood from a finger, smear it, get a nice smooth smear and stain it, then I can differentiate using just visual cues, neutrophils, regular lymphocytes, monocytes, eosinophils, and basophils. And there's a relative number of those. So take a little time to look at this chart, table 2.1. And here's an example. 1 to 3% of the total white blood cells, not red blood cells, there's millions of those. 1 to 3% of the white blood cells in there will be eosinophils in a normal, healthy individual. But if the individual happens to have eosinophilia, which means an increased number of those cells, it may indicate that there's some sort of parasite or some sort of allergic response going on. Sometimes you'll get allergies to pollen that will raise the eosinophil count. But you can generally rule those out or look at those. If you've got a patient sitting there with runny eyes, it's a good indication that they may have some sort of allergic reaction going on. If not, then you can look for some sort of parasitic organism that's there. Now, read through this section. I could sit here and talk to you about it all day, but it's all written down and it's very clear. I like the writing in this book. The granules that you find in your granulocytes, these are also known as polymorphonuclear cells. Those granules are little packs of toxins, of proteins that do specific things. For example, the eosinophils will release cationic proteins that help punch holes in the membranes of invading parasites. So, of course, the little blood cell's not big enough to eat the big worm, so it runs up and it throws its little packets of stuff out, and then it backs up. And if you get enough of them attacking a parasite, then they're releasing things that punch holes in the membranes, that cause inflammatory responses, so it swells up around the worm to prevent the worm from being able to easily move away from the site of infection. All sorts of very specific chemicals are released by these cells at different times. Let's see, you can continue to read through this. Dendritic cells, what do they do? Dendritic cells are really kind of cool. They're the watch salesman. If you walk down Bourbon Street and a guy comes up in a big coat and says, "You want to buy a watch?" Opens his coat up. Well, he's got hundreds of watches in there. Most of them don't work very well. But he's trying to sell watches. These cells usually carry receptors. MHC class 1 and class 2 receptors are put on the surface of these dendritic cells, and they display them for the world to see, just like the guy displaying his watches. So you can read through and read about those cells. There are different types of dendritic cells. Remember, some are produced from the myeloid and some from the lymphoid cells. And they do slightly different things, but for the most part, they're all going to be displaying these antigens that are found in the body. Some of them are going to be found in the bone marrow, but you're going to also find a lot of them in the lymph nodes. So they do the job of displaying antigens so that the lymphoid origin cells can be educated on what to react to and what not to react to. And also they're going to be professional antigen presenting cells in the lymph nodes so that the macrophages, when they've gone out and killed something, can leave the lymph nodes and go back out to do more hunting. They're going to be hunting those foreign invading organisms or cells. All right, I'm going to stop with cells of the lymphoid lineage that regulate the adaptive immune response.